And we can start with the rest, right? Oh, they actually, you want to do information item?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, President Hopkins.
Yes. Good evening. I'm doing things a little differently for the president's report, just in advance of our Board of Trustees and President's Retreat tomorrow. I want to hit three agenda items, three topics during the president's report to share with the trustees as well as the guests. I'd like to begin by asking Trustee Tastani to cover a topic with me, the advocacy plan for 2024 and the workforce development guarantee for community colleges. That will be followed by an enrollment update and strategies from Jesse Wells, to be followed by a budget presentation of the next 5-year projected budget by Michael Sullivan. And we can ask questions. And then I have also provided a written summary in your packet of the remainder of my report. So at this point, if I can, I'd like to turn it over to Trustee Tastani.
Thank you. Everybody has copies of these flyers that were prepared. One was prepared by the Community College Trustees of New York and the other by the Presidents, Association of Presidents. And they kind of explain the dilemma that everyone, the community colleges are in right now in New York State. Current funding, important line, current funding for people at state operating colleges is over $19,000 a year. And for community colleges, about $5,400 a year per student. And that's based upon an archaic formula that still exists, even though approximately 50% of the students in this state, full-time enrolled students are in community colleges. We're getting a quarter of the direct aid per the state. What the New York's Community College Trustees and the presidents are working on right now is a plan for workforce development money. The ask is for $93 million in workforce development money. The goal is readying 20,000 workers directly into the workforce, and the impact of each of this money and of these students into each individual community. You have these letters. The presidents across the state are sending these letters to businesses within the communities. In turn, they will redo them themselves, make it their own, but send them to the governor, the budget office, Ways and Means in the Assembly, Senate Finance, and the higher education committees in both of the bodies to try to put some legislative pressure on. Members of both organizations have testified before the Board of Regents. That went well. Then there was another meeting with the Board of Regents that wasn't so wonderful. It was very non-committal. So with the goal,
I don't think it's not well received.
not well received, no. And tomorrow there'll be further meetings that will be taking place on this topic. What they're asking us is, first of all, to help our president with any businesses that we feel need to be lobbied in this manner, to help us with the lobby at our.
I'm gonna send one to Delta Engineering.
I heard the guy's a real piece of work who runs. So that's part of it. They also would like advocacy from the students and student assemblies, from faculty organizations, so everybody can be on board and push this. The governor's state of the state is going to be on the 9th of January And her budget message will come out approximately on the 21st. I don't think at this late date, I don't see personally, this is nothing official, but this is just my perspective. I don't think that you're gonna see an awful lot in the budgets, in the governor's budget at this late date. I mean,
What the chancellor has put in, it does not
right,
include.
does not reflect this, does not reflect this. It also doesn't reflect, any change in the $428 million that the state doles out to community colleges, across the state. But what they're hoping for, where the pressure is going to be now, is in the budget process. We've got from the 21st of January to supposedly March 31st to get this done. So it's going to be a full court press from now until the 1st of April, basically, to try to get something. Another thing that was brought to our attention today is that in the last, since 2013, the budgets of community colleges in real money has been cut by almost 18% to 20%. And for four-year schools, it's been cut about 3.1%. So there's an equity issue here. And right now, for workforce development, we're the ones that are putting people directly into the workforce. So that's the push. And if you have anything you want to add to it.
Yeah, there are two components to this project. There's the ask that's being done on behalf of the community colleges by the trustees. And then there's the what will it give us? And the product is the workforce development community college guarantee. It supports the governor's pledge of 22,000 new employees in the workforce. The dollar amount is $97 million to be distributed over the 30 community colleges to produce in-demand, high-wage employees in healthcare, in STEM, in cyber, and there's another category as well. The emerging cannabis industry is part of the other category. And basically, it will allow us to hire faculty to support our infrastructure needs, to do professional development, to develop curriculum, to provide wraparound services to help support students in their coaching and their ability to complete programs, and to develop partnerships between the 2-year programs and 4-year programs. As Trustee Testani has mentioned, we are in the process of soliciting letters and information from employers who have benefited from community colleges and the programs that we offer. There's a template, and we're in the process of gathering information, gathering names, gathering contact information so that we can get those letters generated and get those letters out. It would definitely be a great enhancement to what we do, to not only have the funds not restored, but given to us to support the gap that currently exists. And we're doing it in a 2-part fashion, working collaboratively, but also having two very different purposes and functions to accomplish the same goal.
And I think it's also important to mention that this $97 to $93 million will not be part of what we collect on our current aid.
That's correct. So we wanted to share that with.
And I think the current aid is not a question, you're gonna get it.
Yes, that's in the budget.
Additional monies that we're asking for that, right? Really have to push to get.
And the $93 million is actually what would bring the state up to the level that it's constitutionally supposed to give us.
Because it's supposed to be the state a third, the county a third, and
Right.
tuition a third, and it doesn't reflect that at all.
Great. The next item, Jesse, please. I know enrollment is on everyone's mind. It's everyone's job. And I wanted to have the executive enrollment director give us strategies, what's happening so far, so that we can bring that information into our conversation tomorrow as well.
So we wanted to give you, as Dr. Hawkins said, a brief picture of where we've been recently, kind of where we've landed and what we're seeing in the future. And then in a little bit, we'll go into a bit more detail under the academic affairs report on some of the very specific strategies that we're using as part of our plans. No, working just fine.
Nope,
About
just
15 minutes. Oh, there we go. Looks like it went too far though.
There we go.
Here we go. So post-COVID, we took, like every other college has throughout the country, we really had the same rough time everyone else had, but we held our own. And we've seen our enrollments as a college remain fairly flat since then. So in 21-22, we saw 3192. And in 2022, we saw 3194, not much of a change since then. So we managed to maintain flat enrollment. And now we're looking at what's supposed to happen in our community over the coming years. So regionally, high school enrollments are looking to stay pretty stable. This is something we've been watching for years and been very worried about over the course of time. In fact, one of our major SEM initiatives and one of the things we've been doing, which we'll talk more about later on tonight, our College Express program was built around our original fear of what was happening with high school enrollments. Years ago, we started looking into this dip that was coming at that time. And when we started talking to consultants and other people about what do we do about this, they came back at us with, well, you may want to take a look at how many students are graduating from your local high schools and are being sorted away from college. So that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later under the academic affairs report. But if you look at regional high school enrollments over the next 5 years, we're looking at not a huge change even between 21-22 and 26-27. So a little bit less of a cliff like the one we've been looking at. So where does that put us today, as you're all intimately familiar with? The first item on our category here is the loss of BAP that has built into it an elimination of 247 FTEs right off the bat. The good news, I guess you could call it that, is before we even knew that was going to happen, we took part in a Lumina-funded SUNY initiative with ACRO to build a strategic enrollment management plan. And we've talked about that in here before and done some presentations on it. But as part of that strategic enrollment management plan, which has a ton of strategies and tactics in it, spread throughout enrollment offices, college-wide, from pre-admission all the way through to graduation and how we're following up with students after graduation. Goal one in that SEM plan is to increase our overall new SUNY Broome full-time student enrollment by 250 students. And again, I promise you, that was there before we got the bad news, and the strategies and tactics around it were there as well. As part of how we'll get there, there's multiple goals here, but one of the most poignant ones is goal 2 in the SEM plan, which is to increase our institutional retention rate by 5%, which lends to that goal. So what are we looking at in terms of our goals and tactics in that SEM plan? And again, we're going to go into some specific ones here in a bit, but we're really looking at the potential to backfill the loss that we've taken there, bring us to flat and at least hold us there. And then what we're looking to do is as these SEM initiatives move forward, we're looking to expand them as well, so that someday we can come to you and start talking about how we're gonna grow enrollment from there forward. So here's just a little spot of good news in all of that. Beyond the fact that there's a plan in place and everybody's working hard on it, is we have been starting to pay attention to what's happening, excluding back. So if you look back and you look at where we were last year, excluding BAP going into spring, we're actually up 1.3% from where we would have been. And our new advising model, which is something, again, that's been talked about a lot in here, is gaining traction and seems to be working as well, as we're up 24 new and continuing student registrations versus last year at the same time. So it's a little bit of kind of a ray of hope that without the back loss, we are starting to see some gain anyway.
What does that equate to in terms of FTEs? 1.3%.
I'd have to double check. I think I'd have to get that to you. Can't do the math fast enough. We also, I should also say that this is so far. We have an additional week ahead of us in this, and we also do tend to see some enrollments come in after the holidays as well. So where we'll land, I guess, is still anybody's guess for spring, but we're hoping that we see some of these good numbers hold. So I believe that we're going to talk a little bit next about, what this equates to in terms of budget. And then later on during the academic affairs report, we'll talk a little bit more specifically about the College Express program, the mobile enrollment van, and a number of other cool things that we're doing.
Thank you, Jesse. Great. The third piece to the president's report will be done by Michael Sullivan, looking at a 5-year budget projection.
Okay, so this is a report that we've provided to the board generally twice a year, kind of mid-fall and then mid-spring after we have pretty strong numbers. So I'm just going to kind of highlight at a pretty high level this information. This is on the big sheet, the ledger sheet. So Jesse just talked about, so I'm going to talk, I've tried to, so we have the rows numbered, okay, from 1 to 21, and then there are really 10 columns of numbers. So that's, I'm going to kind of move around. Probably the most critical thing to pay attention to is the last column, which is the assumptions and the comments. So as Jesse alluded to, the first 4 rows is really enrollment. And as you can see in those last 5 columns of numbers, 6 through 10, we're predicting flat enrollment, both for on-campus as well as for the high school fast-forward enrollment. Primarily based on what Jesse reviewed, we've done as deep of a dive as we can on the enrollment between budget finance and enrollment management. A lot of detail we had to provide as we were talking with Moody's on the housing refinancing, and SUNY also required a 5-year financial projection that was due about a week ago. So that's what drives the whole budget is enrollment, because once you take the enrollment and do the calculations on the revenues. So I just want to touch on the revenues. I've talked about this in the past. If you take rows 5, 6, and 9B, those are the that's the tuition and fees that are charged for a particular semester. And it was kind of alluded to, that's in the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 formula, that is about 47% of the revenues for the budget versus a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. If you take a look at the state aid as an example, the state aid, which is row 7, is at about 13 million. So if you take 13 million over 50 million, just as a ballpark math number, the state's at about 26%. And then if you take a look at the county, the sponsor share, which is row 8 at I'm taking the adopted budget, which is kind of the fourth column in of numbers at about 7.5 million. Again, over 50 million, just double the 7.5, and they're at about 15%. So needless to say, the formula is pretty archaic and outdated at this point. So the key thing to really take a look at is when you take a look at state aid in row 7 and sponsor share, the combined is about $20.5 million. So when you take that over $50 million budget, almost 40% of the budget is flat. When you take a look at those out years, we're showing state aid at the floor level at 100%, notwithstanding the $97 million that is proposed and discussed. And, the county on average has increased sponsor share by about 1%, pretty modest. 1% of 7.5 million is $75,000. So we have a real challenge here where 40% of the college's revenue is pretty flat. 45 to 50% of it is on the student side. And so if you look at the comment section, as we talk about the student side of it, which is about half of the revenue, we're assuming about a 3.5% increase over the course of the 5-year period. That's basically what the College Board has approved for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, just at about that 3.5%. So we've just used that number over that 5-year period. Like I said, state aid, where our assumption is it's flat, and for the sponsor share, we've represented what the trend has been at about 1%. So those are the most significant revenues. If we then go to the expense side, which is really rows 11 down to 17, the most critical area is obviously payroll and benefits. Payroll and benefits in the current adopted budget is 81% of the expense. So as you know, the college has 3 major labor agreements that range between 4 and 5 years. We're generally, I think, in the beginning of the 3rd year in September. The average salary and wage adjustment is about 2.75%. So that's what you see in row 11 in the comments sections. We factor that in, and then off of that, we adjust the assumptions that we continue to think that we'll make modest progress in adjusting the number of classes that are offered based on the enrollment. Now, given the enrollment is going to be flat, one would expect that to be fairly stable, other than in some cases trying to increase the average class size. Average class size is about 15.5 students per class. So generally, the approach has been to try to increase the maximum on the class size. The minimums are pretty challenging, given we're heavy into health sciences, we're heavy into STEM, it has labs, and so some lab classroom limitations. So we have a range of average class sizes from independent study, which has one student in it, to I think there's a couple of class sizes that are close to 100, but say generally most of them are in the range of 8 to 10 on the smaller side to probably 20 to 25. So there's ongoing efforts, a lot of constraints in light of the FA labor agreement, but we're continuing over the 5 years to show some modest progress in terms of trying to increase that average enrollment. The big assumption is based on turnover on the non-instructional side and generally we have about 30 to 35 non-instructional full-time employees who retire or resign and move elsewhere every year. The base of non-instructional is about 250 full-time employees. So we're assuming about a 50% non-refill rate. If we have 30 to 35 positions a year that are being vacant, our assumption is that we'll not fill about 17 of them. So that's about a 50% vacancy rate each year for the first 4 years. So if you take that 2.75% increase, adjust a little better efficiency on the instructional side, and reduce over a 4-year period about 7% of the non-instructional workforce each year. The rest of the budget, health insurance, both retiree and active, is about 20% of the fringe benefit rate, which is 54%. So clearly, as we reduce the workforce over time, at this point, no layoffs, no retrenchment. It's fairly aggressive, but at this point, that's what the projections are, and that's really what we've implemented in the current year. Any position that becomes vacant comes to the department head first, then to the vice president, and then to the executive council at our weekly meetings to determine whether things can be restructured. You know, all the approaches that I think we're all very familiar with. So that leaves us payroll and benefits, and the only line left is row 15, which is everything else. And it's at about $10 million if you look at the current year. So that's about 18% of the budget. You know, out of 10 million, $1.5 million is utilities. So you're not going to do anything with that. And it's travel, supplies, maintenance agreements. It's been squeezed pretty hard in the past as an area to try to balance the budget. So just not a lot of room there. Assumption is try to increase that by kind of a very conservative inflation rate at about 1.5%. So, and then the only other item in there is capital repair and renovations outside of the capital projects that get approved by the county and come through here for significant capital. There is a modest sum for equipment and for minor repairs in row 16 at about $350,000. So finally, kind of two items that we've been using since COVID. And the first one is row 18, which is the HERF stimulus funds. And as you can look across the first 5 years, 3 years of actual, and then the budget, we're going to run out of stimulus money projected at the end of this fiscal year. Okay. So, based on the 5-year projections beyond this year, if you then take a look at the next row, which is row 19, the college is projecting that for the following year and the year after, we're projecting going to need to use some of the unrestricted fund balance at about 2 million next year, and then about 900,000 for the following year. That still leaves us at about 5 to 5.5%, and then the accumulated benefits of the 17 positions we're now refilling, as well as some increase in revenues over time, especially on the student side. Then over the last 3 years, we're showing a fairly balanced budget. So this is our best shot at projecting over the next 5 years. Clearly, with 81% of it being payroll and benefits, there's not a lot of magic in terms of what we need to do to manage the cost side. And then on the revenue side, as I've said, I think at a 3.5% increase, pretty strong value in terms of the price for community college education at a little over $5,000 a year on tuition and maybe another $1,000 on fees. So we want to be very mindful of that as we go forward. A lot of financial aids provided, as well as foundation support. So those are the assumptions, and the college will, like I said, do update this probably again in February. Once we really know what the spring numbers are going to take a look at, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Michael, I wondered if, what we should have for a fund balance. There was a huge discussion years ago about it.
Yeah, when I came here, it was at about 5%, and we really felt at the time that with middle states coming a couple of years after I got here, that we really wanted to get it up closer to the 10% range.
That's what it should be, 10%.
You know, there's different national metrics that say probably in the neighborhood of 5 to 15%. Some argue that I think if we didn't get stimulus money, it would have been, even though we got 17 million of stimulus money, so it wouldn't even have mattered if we were at 10%, there would have only been 5 million of unrestricted fund balance. If we didn't have stimulus money, then we would have had to take draconian steps to attempt to balance the budget. It's an area that I've taken a pretty strong advocacy of trying to be at 10%, but I think as a transition from being so reliant on HER funds to try to balance the budget while we were just trying to manage the significant decline in enrollment. I mean, post-COVID, we lost 30% of FTEs. So, you know, the effort was to try to take HER funding and stabilize things. And I think we need more time. And, you know, there's nothing pretty in this entire projection. Some people aren't happy with a 3.5% increase on the students for 5 years. Nobody's happy with a 7% reduction in non-instructional staff each year for the next 4 years. And at least I'm not particularly happy in recommending some modest use of fund balance, but I think a combination of those three factors with maybe some adjustments with one or more of those, you know, if the 97 million comes into play, that's probably a $2 to $3 million fiscal impact to the college each year. So that would make a huge difference in terms of the assumptions that we make after the state budget gets approved.
Thank you for the advocacy presentation, the enrollment presentation, and the budget presentation. You can see how all of these pieces play in together, either well or not. So I see a lot of note taking, which is great. Hopefully we'll have lots of rich conversation, but we wanted to give the information to you so that you had it.
Thank you.
And those are, the rest of my report is written and included in the packet.
Thank you. Now that we have a quorum, I'm going to jump back and call the meeting to order. And I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of October 19th board meeting. Motion? Motion. No. Second? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. F and F, I can report on that. We had 3 action items. They were all approved without opposition, and that went quickly in. Oh, okay. Now I would like to take preferred agenda items 3.1 to 3.17 as a group. On any of the trustees would like to pull one out and discuss it? Okay, would someone like to make a motion? Anthony? Second? Second. Margaret? All in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Right. 4.0, 4.1, there's no action items. So that brings us back to 5.2. Faculty Senate. Andrew.
I'm here. And here's our report. This is the inaugural semester of the Faculty Senate. As you may recall, we've had a large reorganization of our shared governance structure, and this largely grew out of the middle stage visit in 2020. So through a democratic process all across campus, Faculty Senate is one of the new bodies. The College Senate, chaired by Aaron Maruli, is the other one. Faculty Senate largely handles academic matters, and the College Senate largely handles operational matters, which is the distinction. As you can see on the report which I sent in, a lot of what we did this semester was to organize the body. This is relatively unique in the SUNY system amongst our peer institutions, a body of the whole. And what that means is that every faculty member is a senator. And that's about 172 people, because we adopted the definition of faculty member as exists in the FA contract. And organizing 172 people who are not necessarily predisposed not to argue with each other can be a little bit tricky. So we've been organizing the body and putting things together. And I think now we have a viable system. It's great. We're getting a lot of interest from across the faculty body. People are taking part and are speaking their minds openly, which is one of the things which we like to see, and also one of the things which Mill States thinks to see. So I think we're really taking strides well for this, but we're getting ourselves organized. What's a little bit tricky. For the interest of the Board of Trustees, I believe the major point of intersection will be the the sort of revitalization or renewal of the policies and procedures system, which we have all across campus. We have a lot of policies and procedures which are antiquated, I suppose would be a word, or difficult to obtain or kind of contradictory. And I've been having talks with Dr. Kelly and Dr. Hawkins about this. We're trying to get a real system together whereby these policies and procedures can be reviewed and get through the shared governance system as expeditiously as possible. Dr. Hawkins visited the body during our last meeting, and we had a really productive conversation, I thought, along these lines, and we'll continue to do so. Our executive committee had a very productive meeting with Dr. Kelly just a couple of weeks ago, whereby we're putting into a system whereby policies and procedures will come to the faculty body. We will gather questions and comments and then present them to present the questions and comments to academic leadership. And we'll get that hammered together. We'll pass a resolution. We'll send that out. And we'll have a lot to do in this regard in the coming semesters and years. But I think we're off to a good start. It's going to be a major task. And so far, there's been a couple of logistical bumps, but we're working together, I believe, in a very positive way, and in a way which maybe we haven't so much done so as productively and collegially in the past. But I think we're off to a good start as a body. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Academic affairs, Dr. Ray.
Okay, we have a fairly brief report, but I do just want to take the opportunity. We had, I think we had mentioned several months ago that we had retained Aleutian to support us in the IT area. So I'm happy to introduce Bob Walker, who is currently serving as the CIO through Aleutian. Comes to us weekly from Kansas City and is doing a great job. And we've really been happy so far with the service. So that's worked out well. Since we are talking about enrollment just briefly, I do want to point out that we have 24 new students that are coming in this spring from the LPN to RN program that's new this spring. So we have a full class of 24 and are also starting an additional evening weekend class, which we used to do biannually, but now we're doing annually, and that's also 24. So happy about that. And then we have a PowerPoint that's very brief that we're going to show you that has first off our new enrollment vehicle on here, which I think many of you saw, but it's taken us quite some time to get it finally in operation and going. And we've been out to a lot of places to demonstrate the enrollment vehicle. So tonight we're going to talk just very briefly about the enrollment vehicle, what's in it, the REACH grant, an enrollment grant, and then our College Express events and our pipeline. So the enrollment vehicle really came about after our REACH grant. So our REACH grant is racial equity for adult credentials in higher ed. And that is to increase the attainment of non-degree credentials and associate degrees at community colleges. And this was a wide SUNY initiative sponsored by Lumina. To help us to bring students of color into SUNY Broome, to get them into degree programs or even non-degree. So this started our non-degree to degree program pathways work. In addition, what we did with that grant, it wasn't a large amount of money, but it got us started, and we developed and received funding to develop workshops where we would go in person to areas where they've been pretty unrepresented in the past, to show them actually face-to-face, show them how to take an online course, because many of them still have transportation issues and so on. So an online course is a great idea, except sometimes that's very difficult for them to get introduced to really figure out how to navigate it. So we've been going into some various places. Some of the workshops that we've gotten already are at the Attain Lab. That was one of our main partners, Southern Tier Community Center, and then the other Attain Lab on North Street, where we'll just go in briefly and teach students ways to navigate the internet and to take an online course so that gives them a little more opportunity. So after we got started with that, SUNY also came up with a very large enrollment grant that we could apply for. And one of the things, and sometimes when you get Jesse in a room and you start tossing ideas around, And we were talking about our REACH grant and how we're trying to get into those underserved neighborhoods, and it kind of came out that maybe we should look at this enrollment vehicle. So that's kind of how the enrollment vehicle got proposed, and we asked for the enrollment vehicle. So with that, we got the enrollment vehicle, we got some funding to update our website, and particularly we got some money to do some really nice videos based on our Pathways coursework, where we're promoting 5 programs, which hopefully you'll see in the maybe next month, or you'll see somewhere along the line, but they're very amazing professional videos for some of our programs that we're really excited about. So in this enrollment vehicle, we have career software, career coach, where students can come into the enrollment vehicle and learn about careers, match their skills with the programs that we have. We can also demonstrate some financial aid, show them how to fill out applications, because it's got several laptops within this enrollment vehicle. The other thing that we've done with the enrollment vehicle is gotten out to some of the high schools, into the underrepresented neighborhoods. Some of the, I don't think we had it in time for the Speedy Fest, but college fairs and events like that, just to make us more visible. I'm going to have Jesse talk about how we've expanded the College Express program and our future expansions for College Express.
So we talked about this a little bit, and it's come up many times. Back in 2019, I think was the original year, Windsor bravely teamed up with us to do our first College Express. And the point of that event was to not just instantly admit students, where you have a handful of students come down and talk to some admissions folks and maybe fill out an application, but to instantly accept the entire senior class of a high school. And at the time that we did it, people thought we were insane. Now we're competing with the state, who's trying to figure out a way to do it. And we have definitely expanded from there. In Binghamton in 2022, and again this year, Deposit last year and this year, and now we've moved into Hancock and Susquehanna Valley. And these events are something to behold, you know, from the first one we ever held to the ones we've just held in the past few weeks. There's definitely a difference in the room when everyone in there hears for the first time that they're accepted to college, because they may not have had that kind of encouragement in the past. Again, this goes back years ago to that original panic of the high school decline, and us hearing more and more about how there are students right here in our regional schools that are just being sorted away from college for many reasons. And we're still getting at some of those reasons now. And the exciting news is that we are moving on. Tomorrow we have a meeting with Marathon. This is one we're very, very excited about. We had an almost College Express with Johnson City a few years ago before COVID, and it kind of worked, but we were doing it where we would kind of meet with them in their English class and try to push it through, which was a very different thing than what we had originally envisioned. And we are about to set up some meetings with Franklin and Gilbertsville, Mount Upton. We're extremely excited about these because that's getting us into a new region. A critical piece now, putting on the marketing hat, is that when we go do these, we make a big deal out of them. We push them out on every social media channel we can find. Press releases, press coverage at the event, from the initial one to today. We really tried to make a big deal of it, and it's paying off because we're starting to get people saying, hey, what about me? Which is good. That's what we want to have happen. So what does this mean? How's it work? So these schools, these initial schools, we were seeing a 5-year decline in applications from these schools until we had our first College Express events. Now we've seen a 55% increase in applications from those schools. And that's great. That's enrollment. That's more engagement with the schools. but there's way more to it. We've instantly accepted 874 students across these schools. And this is what we were really looking at. So there were students in these schools that just felt they weren't college material. And whether it was the fact that maybe they weren't let into a fast forward class, or maybe they didn't have support from home. The minute they become accepted, it's a different story. And our job gets a little harder. When I was talking before about how we're going to turn these strategic enrollment management goals into something that can maybe not just keep us flat, but help us maybe to grow someday. It's going to be through the next steps, how we work with those students to get rid of their concerns about transportation, food, how we're going to connect with their parents, because there are, unfortunately, many situations where it's the parent that doesn't believe that their student should be going in this direction. Mobile enrollment vehicle. That's one of the reasons we're going into these communities and we're talking directly to people in the communities about why community college, which is, by the way, a real good argument these days, especially in these rural communities. We're not about messing about. We're about getting people to work and having real outcomes. And here's some. In Binghamton, we had a 10% increase in underserved minority applicants. We had 7.5% increase in first generation student applicants and 2% in overall registration. So beyond application, but actual registration from the school. So these are the kind of things we think we're already kind of starting to see pay off. Anthony, that 1.3 was 12%. Thank you, Larry, for your math grade. 12 FTEs, 1.3%. And we were hoping that a lot of these engagements are starting to shake things up out in the community. The mobile enrollment van, the REACH funds, which wait till you see these videos that those things produced. It's going to knock your socks off. The career coach software. This is a powerful tool that we're taking out there into the community that's free. When people leave that mobile enrollment van, they have a ton of ideas for careers and exactly what programs and certificates they're mapped to. Free. Just walk away with it. Now we're looking at events we can do with the college that kind of do the same thing for everybody that shows up. So that's where we stand as of today, and hopefully it'll be onward and upward.
Thank you.
Is that a one-time deal, and like in Binghamton, or you're set up to go every year, every senior class?
That's a good question. I think that the key is doing it year after year, because you want to kind of get everybody in the school and everybody around the school believing it's going to happen. And I think that we'll see more and more benefit from it over time. And to that point, we look at our enrollments, we look at our applications and we look at our enrollments and what happens from a college express. But what we're starting to really dig into is what happened a year or two later. As Jason can attest, this was kind of the original message is you might go away to college and we'll help you with everything. We'll teach you the art of enrolling in college, whether you come to us or not. But if something doesn't go well, when you go away, we've already got you in our records. We're ready to snap you into place and get you back on the rails.
And on rare occasions, we can take a success story out with us. So we were able to take Alejandro with us to Windsor, which I think was really a powerful statement to those students as well. And he did a great job.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And the rest of my report is in your packet.
Thank you. Student assembly.
All right, so
Update.
this Friday, the 8th, we had our last student assembly meeting. We had a very good semester. We had a pretty full assembly for the majority, and hopefully next semester we start with nearly a full assembly, and hopefully we'll fill it up quickly. I'm just really happy with a lot of the work we've done, and just, you know, being a broad assembly with students from so many different places. And one of the things that we worked on was a letter to President Stenger regarding the discontinuation of BAP. And it took a long time, but we finally approved the final draft. Originally, we planned to address it from the entire student body. However, due to the low responses we received regarding the letter, we just didn't feel like we had enough words or feedback from the students to sign it as is from like the entire student body. So we just signed it from the assembly. And I sent the letter to Dr. Hawkins, so Dr. Hawkins can hand the letter to President Stenger. I just emailed the letter to Diana. If you could email it to the trustees when you get the chance. Thank you. I apologize for not bringing it, but it's basically, you know, the student assembly standing up for our students and explaining how this is negatively affecting us and how it's affecting us, the staff students, and us currently and in the future. And it's basically the purpose of it is to have President Stenger understand and see how it's affecting us students. You know, it's something just real, something that he can look at and hopefully see our perspective. And so that's something that we're really happy about. And then I attended NYCCT with Dr. Hawkins and some of the other trustees. It was very fun. And I was in a panel with other student trustees and with Assembly member Patricia Fahey. And we mentioned the call for funding equity. And I think this was a very good panel because the student trustees, we had the opportunity to just share stories and talk about how, community colleges really are a stepping stone, in my opinion, and how they give us opportunities that we couldn't think of before. And in many times, community colleges, there's a stigma with attending community college or college in general. So I think kind of just sharing our stories and showing how community college students are here and that we're active, I think it's very useful for, students to think of attending community college, for the trustees to kind of be reminded of what students we have, for the presidents as well, and just for the assembly member Patricia Fahey to kind of like see these numbers. And I know she took one of the flyers with her, so hopefully that had an impact on her. And working with NYCCT, the student trustees are actively working to see how we can be advocates for this call for extra funding. And this upcoming Monday, I'll attend a session that will hopefully lead us more towards how we can do this. And during the conference, we mentioned like attending the budget hearings and things like that. And, sending the letters. And something that I talked with Dr. Hawkins is just having just more students be aware of the situation. So like I share it with the assembly, and hopefully we'll find a way to share it with the broad campus of just, what are we asking for and why. So I think everybody deserves to know, this funding, that is just not, there's no equity in the funding. And, community college students need to know why they're paying so much and how the state and the county should be helping us. So I think just more people being aware of this, the better, and the more work can be done, and hopefully the better the product is. So I'm really, really excited about that. Keep updating everybody on how that's going. And yeah, I was just gonna mention how I was part of the College Express. I think having students share our stories is super, super useful. And I hope that more College Express programs have students from hopefully that school attend and, see their old classmates there. And just, I feel like sharing our story is very, very useful. And I hope that you keep using students as a way to show everybody that you can attend community college and that, we are here getting things done. So I was really grateful for that, and I hope it continues.
Alejandro and the other people, the other students that were in there, that they were were terrifically effective. They spoke very well, and they people were more interested in that than most of the Great job.
Thank you. BCC Foundation, Kathy's.
Kathy's not here. Her report is in your packet.
Right, okay. Facilities update, Dave's not here. And oh, yes, you here. Did you sneak in?
Madam Chair, I have my report, I'm gonna be very brief, I'll hit the highlights. The Old Science Student Services Restroom Project was completed. Final inspection is upcoming, by, Holbert Engineering, and we expect to submit approval of retainage release at the January 2024 board meeting. Design work and cost estimates for the Decker Nursing renovation project have been completed. We have a project team meeting tomorrow to begin to review those alternates and costs. Installation of campus-wide locks continues, even though my report said Wales and Student Services and Old Science were next. Student Services is in progress, Old Science is really complete. After that, we have AT and Student Center, and then the entire campus will have been upgraded from the standpoint of the interior locks. And the only other project I'll touch on briefly is we had a meeting today with the project team for the Little Theater. We have developed alternates for that project and costs as well, and we will be circulating that internally amongst the academic people involved with that and also executive staff. So that is my very brief report. As I said, we have a lot of stuff going on, but I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Michael, anything you want
Just,
to from?
In the packet, just the monthly budget forecast, the same as it has been for the last several months, and everything. There also is after that report, we did provide documentation as to both the FTE impact and the fiscal impact of the BAP program elimination. All the rest of the items are informational and standard reports.
Thank you. Jess,
Standard report this one.
thank you. We have closed executive session. Would someone like?
Wait a minute, I thought Penny said she was gonna show up.
She did.
She did.
Did that little 3 slide.
Oh, the 3 slides were the.
That's it. Are you talking about the actual?
Oh, the videos?
They're,
Oh, yeah, I was hoping maybe next time.
yeah, they're to come. A teaser.
Okay. Executive session, I need a motion. All in favor? Okay.
Reason
Going into executive session.
for the executive session.